Hello then, folks. Welcome to another round table. You appear to enjoy the last one. 150,000 views, 8,000 likes. Why wouldn't we do another one? And this time around then, I am joined by three guests. Zealand, the Cannon Shannon, Jack, WORKTHESPACE Peachman, and greetings and salutations to Loki DOKI, who's luckily kept up the tradition of glasses and beard, which is very important for that spot on the panel. We're going to be talking all things FM23, some of the good, some of the bad, some of the ugly. And yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what everybody thinks. Thank you for the support on the last one of these, of course, and if you're enjoying this one as you go along, do leave a like on it and get in the comment section. Loads of great feedback last time, lots of which we're going to discuss, as well as some of your comments on Twitter as well. We're all on Twitter, right boys? Just nod. We're all on Twitter, so you can follow us all on Twitter. Jack's even got Twitter Blue, so judge him accordingly. Right then, gang. The reaction to the last video, though, Jack, was interesting. I think a lot of people enjoyed four creators sitting down and actually just talking about things openly for the first time in a long time. Loki often does it on his own, so we thought we should probably just do it together for a change. How did you feel about the reaction to it? Were you surprised or were you pleasantly surprised?
I mean, I feel like it was overwhelmingly positive. You're always going to get people who don't necessarily want to hear what we think or don't value our thoughts, but actually I thought there was a healthy dose of people going, yeah, I agree, and also people going, no, I don't agree, which kind of probably means you're landing somewhere in the middle and kind of hitting the sentiment, I suppose, that most of the community has, or certainly providing a balanced viewpoint. The reaction was really cool. It was cool to see so many people interested and also hear the different viewpoints. Obviously we all have opinions, but sometimes it's nice to, rather than perhaps assume based off what we read in our own comment section on a video that's really dedicated to, here's what we think about the game, here what other people have to say about it too.
Yeah, there's 1,000 comments, which is not a small amount of comments on a video like that, but it is a sort of comment also that encourages debate. See, what did you make of it? Of someone that obviously, you speak openly about the game often, so it wasn't a surprise, but I think seeing it in the group format was different for you, and I think people enjoy hearing what you've got to say on it as a sort of a more, because you obviously made the point of how your relationships changed, and I think some people were surprised about that. But how did you feel about the reaction to the video?
I think that it's a different beast in terms of addressing problems when it comes to the game if you do a panel like this, because if I do a video, right, or if I'm just like muckraking on a stream, people can be like, oh, it's for content, or he's clickbaiting, he doesn't really care, whatever. But when you sit down and just talk for an hour about the game with other people who are similarly concerned and enthusiastic about the direction of the game, I think it makes a different type of statement. And it's one of those things you also
more serious, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
and you don't know how it's going to be taken as well. And then when it was taken so well, and so many people were on the same boat, I would say, or at least headed in the same general direction. I think that helped make a more positive statement as a community instead of just sitting there yelling about things.
Yeah, which we do as well. So it's all part of the game. Loki, were you convinced by the clickbait title? Did you watch the video? And if so,
I did watch the video.
What did you make of it?
I didn't go through the comments, but I watched. I thought it was really good. I thought it didn't feel like a let's get together and say all the things we hate about Football Manager or anything. It felt quite well balanced. There was lots of talk about things you liked, and things you wanted to see improved, and things you just didn't like, and maybe some of the disconnect between Sports Interactive and the people that actually play their games and stuff. I thought it was a good video. And like Jack said, it's if you get a load of hate for being a shill and get a load of hate for being a hater, then you've probably landed quite well. So yeah. Decent.
I think to address it, because some people were like, oh, you just clickbait this whole. Every video is clickbaited to a degree. Like most videos on YouTube will be clickbaited. I want people to watch the discussion. If I'd called it four guys talk about Football Manager, they wouldn't have done as well, I don't think. But I want people to watch these videos because I think the conversation is important. And whether you disagree or agree with us, I think it's just important that we're having the conversation about ultimately wanting to make the game better. And as much as this video may come across negative at times or over positive at times, I think that for all of us is the goal, that we want to make the game that we all play that bit better. Because it's a better investment of our own time. Let's then talk through some of the questions we got. And on this topic, again, we had a question come in from Plastic Pearl on Twitter who said, do you think that YouTubers or Twitch streamers needing to play the game as a full-time job over a number of years will eventually make more critical, or be more critical of the game, than if they play it recreationally? Why was that word in there? So what do we think? Are you impacted, Jack, on the fact that you earn money from the game? Does that impact because we didn't talk about this the first time around. Does that impact you wanting to be more negative? Because there's certainly a view that negativity drives views, and it does on YouTube. Don't get me wrong. There's a reason the title was the title. I wanted people to watch it. So to that degree, there is. But personally, to you, does it affect the decisions you make when talking about the game?
Not really. I think there's, some people who might feel a need to have a filter about what they talk about. I'm someone who is both critical and also praises Football Manager for the good and bad that they do. I feel like this year is just a weird year, right? Because I think this is the first year in a while where, as a creator who plays the game, I look at it and go, I don't feel excited about the game this year. And I'm the kind of person who will often get excited about the little things that I know will make a meaningful difference when I'm playing the game for hundreds of hours over a year. So if I'm not that excited about it, I maybe think, well, surely other people must feel this way, right? Naturally, when your job revolves around playing a certain game, you want the game to be continuously moving in a forward direction. It's that thing where when you make that decision to make full-time content on a specific video game, one of the calls you have to make is, what is the future of this video game? You'll see battle royales and different video games come up that, aren't yearly releases, and people will make content on it, and then that game has a life cycle. Whereas with Football Manager, I assume we all feel the same here. There's this anticipation that the game will continue to grow and just go from strength to strength, and the people who play Football Manager and buy it most years will continue to buy it most years. So when there's a year like this year where me, as a normally pretty positive person, someone who perhaps having worked in video games has a slightly different lens that I look through things with, that is perhaps slightly more forgiving, maybe slightly less cynical when it comes to business practices of companies or whatever, when I'm sat there thinking, this year feels a bit lacking, I have to assume that that is an opinion that is more widely held. And whilst I'm not expecting everyone to agree, that's kind of how I felt about it this year. Now, is that impacted by my full-time job? Undoubtedly it is. At the end of the day, I want the best Football Manager I can have every year. And if I look at a year and go, I'm not excited about it, other people aren't excited about it, that's probably a problem.
Yeah. What about you, Loki? Because you're not someone that is new to being critical of Football Manager as a type, or even as a community, right? You've made some videos on that, and those videos tend to do better than maybe a Let's Play video would occasionally. Is that factored in, or do you think that's just something people are more interested in at the time?
For me, I don't think it changes because it's my job or I make YouTube videos about it. I'm not sure if in an alternate reality where I never made a YouTube video that I'd be angrily tweeting SI, or something like that. I think that the enjoyment for me has never really changed that much. I'm quite a, it may sound weird, shallow player of Football Manager. So there's quite often so many new features that don't even hit me anyway, so that I don't use. I think the enjoyment of it's usually when something bubbles up that gets me so annoyed. It's like I need a release, yeah. and the video is the release of that energy.
Was Miles' game face? Was Miles' game face one of the?
Don't that. Oh, that was the worst PR. Yeah. That. So occasionally it will just sort of bubble. I never make those videos for views because there'd be a lot more videos. Like you said, they do well. It's always, I just need to speak about this, or it could be something that I'm not too bothered about. But I see so many people in my comments talking about one particular thing that I might zero focus in and have a better look at it. But yeah, I'm still. When I need to get out my system.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think this series, if we're going to make it a series, I'm calling it the round table now, is a product of that. It's that we feel like we had to say something. It was too hard to ignore it this time around. How do you feel about it, Z? Because you've not made any videos really that have been of the release of the launch of FM23, other than being involved in this, that have been overly critical. But have you found that in the past that you feel like being more honest will do better? I don't know if that's the way he means it really, but again, being critical of the game will make it better.
I think I particularly end up in a position where if I compliment the game, I am definitely, because I've visited the offices before, right? There's pictures around of me, pointing at the name on the back of the jersey, standing in the foyer of the freaking Football
I thought you meant
big briefcase of cash.
You went to a site. There was just pictures of you on the wall. Just
yeah, I know.
Yeah, next to the Pele signed shirt, there's a Zealand shirt now. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, they put it up in the frame thing. Yeah, so I mean, it looks like I'm getting paid off, right? And so that is a very easy line to draw if I'm like, oh, I'm really excited about these new features. People are like, paid, right? And then you go the other. I think that's just where my life is now, right? And then if I make a video where I'm like, game sucks, I'm letting out a lot of line on making a video that's like, I hate the match engine, right? Like, because there's gonna be another update. There's no way there's not. If there's not by March, then I'll probably be upset and actually make a video like that. But I'm also aware, and you become more aware the more time you spend doing this, the impact that those sorts of things have. So I need to be carefuler making a video like that, because there are a lot of people that work at SI that I do like, that I do know want to make a great game. So I'm not just going to go out and like offhand accuse them of, they're not trying, they're not working, this is ridiculous, they're fleecing us for money. But I do have legitimate concerns about I have legitimate concerns about yearly sports games. This is something that I blast from the rooftops every opportunity I get. So I'm not necessarily blaming them for not making worthy improvements every year. But this is a year where they tried to make worthy improvements, but it just doesn't quite work yet. It's like they released the game 6 months early, is what it feels like. Like we're still playing some sort of alpha version. But you're right, I haven't made a lot of videos about it. I've gone with just making videos about the normal tutorial stuff when I'm talking about Football Manager, to try and help people deal particularly with the lower league aspects of the game, because that's what I'm really getting an experience with right now. And we'll be uploading commentary videos if by April I'm still playing the same game, because that would not be good.
That was your approach in a previous year, right? When you mentioned about player development, or sorry, not player development, youth team ratings. Was it? What was it? What's the actual?
It was it was the youth ratings of
you took some time with that, right? That wasn't straight away. That was a conversation you'd had privately a lot with other people, and you were waiting for something to happen. So you are pretty fair about it. Is what you? I think.
I try. I mean, everybody thinks they're fair, right? Nobody thinks they're the bad guy, right?
You're pretty fair. You're pretty fair.
I try to, I'm not parachuting in December, like just going for the viral video of like, Football Manager sucks. It's coming out in February. I'll do honestly, I don't do the should you buy the new Football Manager, which I've done the last 2 years, until April, typically, right? Because that's when the game is full. That is the game, right? It's not going to change again. So to me, that's what feels fair, even though I think, as everybody else has talked about, if I wanted to just grab an extra, depends on what the ad rate is, I don't know, $500,000, I could just make that video in December, but I'm trying not to. And I don't think it's fair to, given the way that they make the game, which is it's not done until the January update, which comes out at the beginning of March, likely. So
you're giving them so add some balance. You're giving them a lot of leeway there with that particular attitude of you'll wait and see. Like much like this video, we could have made this video in December when the initial match engine didn't change from the beta, and it clearly had a lot of issues. The update said it had a lot of issues. This video could have come out earlier. I waited until January because I thought it was probably a better time just to wait and see after Christmas. Everyone would have had some time away and some time to process how they feel about it. And obviously you watching now, playing it, and you obviously have ways of feeling about it. And I know how you feel about it because I did a survey on it, boys, which took it took a wild ride. 17,000 people filled it in. Most of you watching are definitely male and in your 20s. If you're not, then you're unique in a sense. But people were, so obviously the first video we made was in October, for those that remember. It was late October, before the game had officially released, and now we're making it a few weeks or a few months in advance, or later on. I should say, this isn't in advance. We didn't make this in November. Didn't predict what would happen. But we asked some questions on this of, are people excited? Are people enjoying it? And I'm going to come to you boys. But let's first see what people thought. 46.8% of people are enjoying Football Manager this year as a 4 out of 5, which is a big number and not necessarily representative of the video we made in October or the video we're making right now, of how much we are necessarily enjoying it. So that's what we're going to discuss in just a moment. As you can see on the screen now, 19% of people with 5 out of 5, 25.9% of people with 3. And if you can hear Doug in the background, he's about a 1 right now. He's not enjoying it at all. So Jack, we'll come to you on it. Are you enjoying FM23? You said before you weren't, I don't know, your videos are doing very well. Does that help? I'm sure that helps.
To an extent, This is a weird year. I mean, I'm someone who typically will just play Football Manager, and even if everyone else hates it, I'm still having fun. Whereas this year, I think I've been more conscious than ever before about not playing it too much. I think for me, it boils down to the fact it doesn't feel different enough to FM22. And had it not come out, would I still be playing FM22 and enjoying it? Yeah, I probably would be. Am I enjoying FM23? There are aspects of it that really, really grate me down. I think it's the first Football Manager in a while where I don't feel like I could sit down and play for 4 or 5 hours uninterrupted, which is perhaps one of the reasons why I've not streamed lately. Yeah. Like, people might have noticed it. I am not streaming. I don't think I've streamed in the last month, and there's quite a few factors that go into that. But one of them is just the fact that this year, for the first time ever, I am paranoid of burnout. I feel like this year's game feels like I'm still playing last year's game, just with a few more things that actually annoy me rather than feel like genuine enhancements, especially when it comes to the match engine. Am I enjoying the game? At the moment, I feel like the fact that I'm having to manage my hours that I play and play less of it to maintain that enjoyment probably reflects how I feel about the game. Exactly. And it's the first Football Manager where probably by the end of November, start of December, I was getting really annoyed with the match engine. Obviously, there was a match engine update that came out, but we've had one update in the last 3 months now.
We'll talk about the match engine in a future bit.
And that is kind of the crux of it for me. That is something that has severely impacted my enjoyment, especially at the lower leagues. Like I said, we'll talk about it later. But for me, I think my biggest issue is it still feels like I'm playing last. It doesn't feel like enough of an upgrade to keep me excited through the year, whereas in previous years there's been enough new stuff that would stop me from going back, where this is the first year ever where if I wasn't a content creator, part of me sat thinking, would I go back to one of my FM22 saves and like play it in my free time? Over playing a new save?
Is that the first time you've thought that with the version?
I think it is. Usually I try not to get attached to a previous FM save game because I know I have to move on as a creator. There's almost an intentional detachment where I'll unplug everything a month before the new game comes out. So I'm excited for the new game and not, thinking about the old one. Whereas this year it's a weird year for Football Manager in the sense that I'm someone who in previous years would have considered myself someone who buys the game every year and plays it enough to get satisfaction out of buying it every year. I'll enjoy the little things enough. Whereas this year I'm sat thinking, the little things don't feel like enough to keep that enjoyment. Like, I feel like I could go back to FM22 and there's very little I'd miss from this year.
It's really interesting that you feel that now, because obviously we've done this a similar amount of time, and you this year are conscious of it and are making decisions on it. And it was probably obvious to people on my channel specifically, I had that last year, where I felt like the game wasn't a huge upgrade from 21 to 22, felt pretty marginal. And obviously, I don't necessarily, with the showdown and everything, I don't have the luxury of sitting back and just going, do you know what, I'm going to take a step back from everything. I sort of have to be present in all of that. So I didn't have the option of sitting back, but obviously you've decided that for your well-being to a degree, that any career, that taking a step back this year is right to do. Loki, how are you enjoying it this year? Obviously the Journeyman's back, so you must be loving it.
So I'm an obsessive in the way that I have 2 YouTube saves, a Twitch save, a network save, and a personal save currently.
It's a lot.
Regardless of what, doing YouTube or anything, I'd still be playing this a ton. I can separate out because it's like when you do it's really hard. It's a really hard game to review in general, just because it's from now. If you didn't play all the other versions, you play Football Manager, you go, wow, that's such an in-depth, great Football Manager sim. But so I can separate out I just love the game. And I would probably play it if there was a data update every year, and I would still play it tons, as opposed to what are the new features this year, and be critical of the fact that there's just not been enough improvement, as we talked about before with all sports games doing a yearly sports release. Any game doing a yearly release essentially it makes it tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm enjoying it because I love it. I quite enjoy the badness sometimes. especially because it makes for funny moments and silliness and crazy stupidity. So I kind of like that. I can embrace the madness.
I like them. I just don't like them 3 times a game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
third one gets a bit old now. It's like, okay, yeah, funny.
Especially when you're streaming. Like Jack mention's not streaming, and I know you're coming back to streaming like regularly, Loki, as well. I've done a few streams where I'm sort of 3 hours in. I've played 10 matches, and every game has had like 3 incidents, and I'm like, this is really starting to grate on me now. I just play Warzone. It's like, I'll just do an hour of Warzone to calm down. Doing like war should not be calming me down.
Yeah,
like,
I play League of Legends to calm down. That's bad.
I mean, that's a real issue. You should talk to someone about that, Loki.
I've got a problem.
Yeah. Z, we didn't really talk about it.
I
want to bring up.
Yeah, sorry.
That's true as well.
All right.
What was really interesting to me, and we talked about this privately a little bit on the podcast we do together as well, 20 good minutes, check it out, is that you decided in the launch of Football Manager to watch the World Cup almost exclusively on your Twitch channel. There was no Football Manager. Like as the Football Manager guy to a lot of people, that is not only a big decision to make, but then to like be cool with. And obviously you love the World Cup and you don't get the opportunity to watch every game, right? Which I think is the point you've made before. But do you look at it from the other side? I don't know if Sports Interactive look at that and go, he's not playing our game. Like, what was the decision behind it? Did Football Manager play any part?
I don't think I didn't give any thought to how they would perceive it, and that's not to be mean at all, but it is funny.
That's right. That's how it should be.
Yeah, exactly. But it is funny to think about. They're kind of sitting there like I am making this giant commentary on the game, like there's
emergency meetings.
Exactly. They're like, well, yeah, this boardroom miles ahead. Like, Sealand's not playing the game. What are we gonna do? That wasn't really the point. The decision was, I like trying new things, and I had always wanted to watch all of the World Cup matches. And I know the question is, does Football Manager play a part in it? I think that the fact that there was not a lot of excitement about any particular thing in Football Manager 23 was a really significant contributing factor. Because if there was actual excitement about anything in FM23, I think it would have been a lot harder for me to commit to doing that.
Okay, so if they came out with a new graphics engine,
yeah.
Would you have watched the World Cups? Would you have done the things the same?
I would have done that. I would have also played a lot more Football Manager during that time. In the entire World Cup,
between games, would you have played it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would have had it up and played it between games and stuff like that. I streamed Football Manager once for a month. And made
at the most pivotal time, which is the crazy bit.
Yeah, but I've always been a bit of a psycho when it comes to that time in particular, because I don't have like a launch recipe, you know. I've only been around for 2-3 launches. If Football Manager created legitimate excitement, I would not have done it the way that I did it.
So to bring it back to the question, are you enjoying it? Now you're playing it. Now you have got a save with Taunton that you're really enjoying. Or you're really playing. Are you enjoying it? I'm gonna agree with Loki here. I probably would enjoy playing Championship Manager 97 with no improvements. So a lot of me is having fun, but I'm very passionate when I'm playing and in the streams, and I have lost it a good number of times. Can't
imagine that.
Yeah, I have lost it a good number of times in the Taunton save, just because of the lack of logic, particularly in the match engine. I find that it is the match engine that typically sets me off, but I am enjoying it. Like, and maybe I'm just it's a Stockholm syndrome or something. I'm just a glutton.
Yeah, we're locked in. We're in now. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I need to just scratch that itch. I need to play Football Manager, and so it was fun. Over the last week, I played a whole season, right? And so that was great. World record speed for me too, but that's not.
I was going to say that sounds like.
Yeah.
Did you have someone else playing in between? Or?
No, I'm flying through the games, but the Yeah, I just feel like I'm more at war with the game than I have been in the past. Not verbally, just like actually playing the game. I feel like I'm fighting the game. I'm like trying to overcome this.
It's funny
struggle.
As you said that, me, Jack, and Loki nodded. there's a real great nodding.
That's a good, that's a good way of putting it.
Moment there.
Yeah.
I just on how I feel about it equally. Like I felt like the early parts of the game, especially if you're struggling playing it, like if the save's not going well, that then highlights every little element of negativity that you feel towards it. I've got a save at the moment with a European journeyman I'm doing on Twitch, which is I think I'm sort of 7 seasons in and I've had 6 clubs. So like it's been very different. I'm pretty low down in Europe, but now I'm sort of getting deeper into a save. This is the important thing. Much like I would with any Football Manager game, the deeper I get into the save, the more fun I'm having. But that initial burst of starting a new save on what feels like the same game is a grind. It's difficult. And I'm going to be starting, like Glory Hunter's coming back to my channel soon, and I'm going to be starting a new save again. And I am concerned that like I'm going to feel like, okay, I'm doing this bit again, and this is the same, and this is the same, and this is the same. But then once I am deep enough in, I'm hoping at that point it'll be like, oh, the story is like carrying me through this now, which Football Manager tends to do no matter what you're playing. Graph coming up on screen, boys, I put it in the Discord for you as well. Loki made a point about something of that. If you're new to the game, you probably think this is really exciting and really fun. The numbers in the survey bear that out. If you the newer you are to Football Manager, especially FM22, FM23, the more enjoyment you are having for the game. You can see there it's sort of between that 3 and 4.5 mark, 3.5, 4.5 mark anyway. But again, there's a significant rise the more recently you are playing the game. So this has always been the conversation, right? As much as we are being negative towards the game, some people might say, we all love it. We all think it's a great game. Our conversations recently have been more about is it doing enough? And this conversation will go into that case of, is it doing enough for what we expect in the year that we're in, based on previous years and upgrades and things like that. And that's where the conversation comes in. But I think, again, it's fair to say we're all enjoying it. We just could be enjoying it more. And that tends to be the conversation, how it works. Let's go into some match engine chat, because Jack can't contain himself. I can feel it.
He's going to bang on about headers.
No.
Yeah, he's got numbers now.
Carlos on Twitter said, this FM23 is so inconsistent, it always drives me away from the game. Is this the most inconsistent Football Manager, therefore the hardest in a while? And is it a case, Jack, that the game is harder and you're worse? Or are there match engine flaws that are still causing you a problem? Because we saw the biggest match engine update we've ever seen, but it also didn't come out at launch. Like from the beta, for those that missed it, from the beta, they then waited for a period of time before they actually released the biggest match engine update I can ever remember.
There's a lot of notes.
Yes,
I can't remember one. And defenders were a big issue. Lelouch's not here to defend himself, but he thought the match engine was fine. But they obviously thought different to that. And Jack, you've got some real issues which need to go on the forums, but can also be formed here.
I don't want to go into the issue specifically too much, but essentially, I've only got one save game at the moment. It's in the National League, and I'm seeing centre backs getting 35 headers per 90, like average. Like the match engine, at least in the lower leagues, which I have to confess is where I've put most of my time because I'm not playing the game as much this year. It's kind of flawed to the point where you're basically relying on defensive errors to score goals. You see a lot of the same highlights where a defender misses an interception, the ball goes over the top, and the attacker's just anticipating the ball through. Interesting what Carlos said about it being inconsistent, because I feel like this year, in previous FMs, I feel like there was kind of maybe 85% to 95% of things that felt like you could control, but there's always an element of Football Manager that is kind of beyond the control of the manager. And that is something that obviously real managers have. That is something that is why we play the game. If it was always the same every time you put the same inputs in, it'd be pretty boring at the end of the day. My biggest gripe with the game this year is, I think in previous years, there was a smaller amount of stuff out of your control. And at the same time, there was stuff that you could do to try and address issues that you'd see. Whereas this year, it feels like the AI of players just does weird stuff. No matter the quality of the player, you could improve that defense that's struggling a little bit with new players. You will still see the same weird mistakes that just feel like they're out of your control. And so when you're playing the game, you feel like you're battling against the game. You're basically hoping that you have less of the kind of bloopers, the big errors that result in goals than the AI. And it becomes a little bit frustrating to play. Now, like I said, I feel like there is a big difference in the match engine depending on the levels that you play at. And there is part of me that managing in the National League looks at some of the stuff I see, the patterns I see, where the match engine, I'm going to be honest, it's ridiculous. Like, you have 15 players scoring 20 or more goals a season. In the National League, I think in the last 10 years, there's not been 15 players score 20 or more goals across all the seasons. Like, it's... And ultimately, Football Manager is meant to be this simulation of real life. And I feel like a lot of the changes that went into the latest match engine probably did fix stuff at the higher level of things, which is where more people play the game. There's a Champions League license. There's a reason they bring that in. It's because they know a lot of people will just manage bigger clubs at top European teams.
Yeah, their stats probably show that.
But down at the lower levels, the match engine, I mean, Z's managing in the same league as me at the moment. It feels so frustrating to play because you just see the same highlights with pacey strikers getting in behind when a defender misses an interception or just a big passing lane opens up. And you kind of just feel at the whims of the game. It feels like there's just too much out of your own control. And when you try and tweak stuff and try and address it, it doesn't really change anything. And that fundamentally becomes a frustrating experience. And it kind of reminds me of when I first started playing Championship Manager and you don't really know the game yet and how to fix stuff. And I'm feeling that having played the game for over 20 years. And I feel like that's a bit of a problem.
So, question for you both, because I think this will help nail it a little bit, is that are you playing tactics that you want to implement into the engine, right? There's always been this idea you can play any tactic as long as your team understand it and it runs well. Or are you playing tactics? Because obviously part of you doing it as content as well is you're trying to be successful and drive it forward and move it on and things like this. Or are you using a tactic that you know helps to break the engine or gives you these situations that occur more frequently?
I'm trying.
The question goes to both you and Z.
I'm trying to.
I'm trying to survive, man.
I'm literally the tactic I've built right now was I'm losing and I need to patch the hole where the hole's popping up. So I just cooked something up.
But is it played to the match engine? Because
you're trying to force highlights, at least for me, in the lower leagues. I'm playing direct passes.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So you play three strikers. Do you play three strikers, Jack? Do we think
I play a 4-2-4 with wingers really high up the pitch because it's the only way to play it, feels like. Just to lump it forward and hope you have men forward to just get in behind.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Like, how do you feel about it? Like the match engine this year, you've played a little bit.
These guys playing in the high echelons of football. I'm in the Ghanaian 3rd division currently, and sounds like the Ghana Man Football Academy of Excellence, Pure Joy Stars, and I'm not. I noticed the goal scoring is off the charts. Like my star striker has, I think, 15 games, about 36 goals, and he's not the top goal scorer in the division, and so the goals are absolutely bonkers. I'm not noticing the headering quite as much as Jack did. Like I've seen it a few times, but it's just I'm seeing more sort of direct goals that are just lumped over the top, where a centre back just sort of wanders off. Just he's not remotely in position where he not even close enough to miss a header. Just he's gone off for a walk, sort of thing. So I do have. I think my single. I have this problem. Maybe it's just like a niggle that's just now when I see it, it just annoys me more. Is defenders not letting the ball go out for a goal kick. They're like, no, I'm going to keep this one in for no apparent reason, sort of thing, constantly that leads to goals. But yeah, not as much. But the goal scoring definitely. But I even, when Jack talked about it, I went into the stats of mine, and we don't have the same sort of crazy headering as he does. Maybe it's just we've gone down so far that it's gone the other way. Or something.
They can't head it at that level, Loki. So they
don't try.
Yeah. Just on that, so SI put so many fixes in the update to do with direct attacking, playing defenders dealing with balls. And I'm in a situation where in the National League, no team is conceding less than a goal a game. But in the Player of the Year voting, 9 of the 10 players are centre-backs because they win headers. It's like they're getting 30 headers, but they concede a goal again.
To give people Player of the Year. On that, Jack, what should they be doing?
I looked into some stats by IFAB, and they don't track it down at the lower leagues, like the kind of heading. But for a top 5 European league, a defender typically averages 6 to 8 headers a game. Now, I will accept that in the lower leagues of football's more direct. It's in the air more.
Let's go 10.
But there's players getting 1,000 headers a season. Like, it just makes no sense. And when you're playing it, it feels like I'm watching volleyball at times. Like, I have actually gone and watched a few full-length games to go, is this a case of I watch the key highlights and I'm seeing one thing and that's irking me? I got more annoyed when I watched the full game because it go, can see, well, these headers are happening now. It's just one centre-back lumping it to the other. They just go back and forth. And
I thought that you went to watch volleyball. I'd been to watch the volleyball.
I thought he was going to compare. He's taking notes.
No,
volleyball's very similar.
I mean, like Z said, I feel like you're forcing highlights this year. There are just, at least at the level that I'm playing at, there's certain things that can happen. And I had a Southampton save I did play a lot before the update. And to be fair, I think the update, by all accounts, did fix some stuff for certain things. I've not managed at that same level again. I have not played in a more frustrating match engine than the match engine we had through the beta. Obviously, there was no patch to the match engine at the end of the beta, but we stuck with that version for longer. And I'm sat now, like I said, 3 months after the game's come out, sat thinking, what happened to the system we used to have where they had opt-in betas for specific match engine updates on Steam? Like, older players might remember this. There was a period where SI, rather than put out full-fat updates to the game, they would provide a special little code that you could put in your Steam library in the beta section, and you'd get like an updated match engine, and they would go, there might be issues with this, but if you want to help us collect data, if you want to play something that's a bit different, this is an option. And that is something that has vanished, which feels so bizarre because I think in the last 5 to 10 years of gaming, it's become norm when a game comes out now to expect an update every month, you know, a bit of progression there. So the fact that we're sat on a game that typically has one big update for the beta, then one at the end of the beta, then, like Z said, we usually have one at the start of March and that's it. The fact that we've lost those intermittent updates, like that feels like such an archaic old system now.
Yeah.
Like, I remember F1 Manager, which I think we might talk about in a little bit. F1 Manager, people were livid by the fact there were only 6 updates in the first 3 months of that game being out. And
there's FM players were like, oh, that'd be beautiful.
I'm sat there thinking, you have no idea.
The argument against for SI, the easy argument would be resource. It would be like, we don't have the manpower to do that. We can't put out as updates as regularly as we want. There's too much data, there's too much information, and there's too much back coding that goes on that would influence too many things. They've said a lot of the time, they change one thing, it could influence 10 other things. They've got to be super careful with it. And they're obviously aware of that. But your system that you're suggesting of having like other little sort of beta versions of match engines that could come out pre it becoming like the main match engine would help to solve that, hopefully, and mitigate
have an opt-in
that type of issue.
The fact they used to do this, which is why it becomes all the more frustrating, I think.
Yeah, and that's not unusual. My issues, I actually don't. So I equally played again like sort of lower reaches of the European leagues, and then I'm working my way up a little bit. Obviously played a beta save, which was with a bigger team, but that was again pre-update. Is that I don't have huge issues with the match engine. I still have, and I'll come to you on this, I still have huge issues with the graphical animations that exist that then showcase those elements of the match engine. I don't think the match engine is. I think the graphics engine now and the animations are doing a huge disservice to a pretty good match engine. So while I accept there are flaws with it, and I'll ask you a big question at the end of this, is of do you think it's better than last year's? But like, whether it be players stopping or heading or missing or morphing through players or lack of dribbling or tackling or red cards, the fact is I can sit here and list that off like it's nothing. I could have gone on and done 10 more issues that I see with it. That to me is still one of the bigger issues, and I know we're getting a reputation for stop going on about the graphics. No one cares about the graphics. Not what the survey says. A lot of people now care about the graphics, and when you produce a game where the features feel underbaked going into this year, we do look closer at the match engine. We do look closer at the graphics engine, and so this was inevitable. Like when people's enjoyment is great, and again it comes back to the survey a little bit. So we asked people if they enjoyed it. And 46% of people said they are enjoying it, but equally, on the improvement from FM22 to FM23, 46% of people give that a 2 out of 5. They think the progression from that year's game to this year's game, and I think the look of it generally is probably a huge factor in that. Again, the features don't feel revolutionary, and the match engine and the graphics engine, especially the graphics engine, right, looks the same, Z. So do you think it's partially that as well, that the representation is now at a point where it can't even showcase what the match engine's trying to do?
I think Football Manager's stuck. Honestly, I'm going to circle back just before I forget, just kind of devil's advocate, the whole long ball thing. I can already see the counter argument that SI would make is like, well, you've designed your team to play extremely direct. And it's like, that is a symptom, not the cause of the disease. I just want
Can
to
I say on that
argument for them. Yeah.
To start my season, I was like, I'm going to play a 4-2-3-1 that's pretty and see if that works. And I didn't win in my first 5 and went back to the old system.
What is wrong with you?
I
You can't
tried.
play that in non-leagues.
I tried.
Chaos.
Sorry,
I just wanted to get that out there because people will be like, well, he's just playing early direct, and that's why it looks like volleyball. But I think that most of the time, and this is something when I have a cooler head on stream, I'll try and emphasize to people watching is like, well, most of the time you're yelling at the match engine, you're really yelling at the graphics engine, because the match engine is saying that should happen, right? Crunching all of the numbers and whatever. And then the graphics engine just doesn't show you it particularly well. But I really do think that they're working in tandem this year. I think that we can have serious conversations about bricks in a minute because I know we want to. But the actual representation of what's happening, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And we have this thing on my stream where we call it the frowny face. And people do like a peepo frown or whatever it is every time it pops up, where your center backs don't drop off no matter what happens. And what ends up happening is your back line legitimately looks like a frowny face because your fullbacks are deeper, right? Like your fullbacks get deeper. So it looks like a frowny face. And your fullbacks, whatever reason, and this is great because this happens in real life all the time, they try to cover. Right, because the center backs go up and then the fullbacks come back and then they sweep things up at the bottom. And the frowny face happens a lot. I think it's the number one issue in the match engine, quite honestly, because your back line turns into this. Your center backs go forward or the ball goes down the wing and your center backs just don't get back. I mean, they jog back like they're running in quicksand with 25-pound weights in their ankles. Like they don't move and your fullbacks get back all the time. And I don't know, is that graphics engine or match engine? Is the match engine just saying that guy should be open, but the graphics engine doesn't know how to show that he gets open from this center back, so this center back just gets hit by like a lawn dart or something? Yeah. Or is it the match engine actually is just not doing a good job of computing the matchup tactically?
It's got to be the match engine for that side of things, isn't it?
I would think so. Yeah.
But Z's point there is really interesting. When you say you don't know, the amount of times I've sat playing, I'm going, I don't know what's happened. I don't know what should have happened, and I don't know if that's what should have happened or just looks weird. Like,
it's like
that's
I
so
think a perfect
strange.
example is like a penalty, and it's the match engine's side that there's a penalty, but the graphics engine is shown that your player's done the most perfect timed tackle and kicked the ball away ever. And you're like, okay, so it was decided beforehand, and then the graphics didn't know how to show me that was a penalty, essentially.
Every penalty looks... There's 4 types of penalties. There's pushes, there's tackles from behind, there's slide tackles that are good, and there's handballs. It feels like they're the penalty.
The handballs are great because it's like a corner. It's like, handball, you're like, where? Did anybody...
Or a player just does a forward roll on the floor, and you're like, why have you...
I'd love to see a hotspot in the match engine of where penalties are given away, because I think on the byline, just inside the box near the corner flag, is where players always get fouled. Like that's how you'll see them run
the most dangerous place.
And that's kind of the issue for me is if it visually looked better, it almost makes the match engine faults more easy to forgive. But because it looks the same as last year, but I feel like there's almost more issues, at least right now, compared to last year. Last year didn't frustrate me like this year's does. That makes it feel bad. Like, if we had all these irks with the game this year, but it looked really pretty, I'd probably go, at least it looks nice. Like, there'd always be a degree of forgiveness.
No, you'd be complaining about them painting in a turd, wouldn't you? You'd be like, no, it looks pretty, but it's still broken.
Yeah. I think they're at a crossroads here. They are aware of people's issues with the match engine and the graphics engine. And it's all well and good being aware of it, right? And like the video that we did before, I know they watched what we talked about in terms of graphics. I know they watched it. Like, some people probably agree, some people don't agree. There wasn't like clear feedback given to me on how they feel about it. Similar to the survey, I'm gonna have a conversation with them, I think, at some point, which I think I'm fine to say. Whether it does anything or not, it's not really up to me. Like, the survey was never done as like, take this information and make loads of changes. It was let's have a look at what people actually think. And the idea that like only the hardcore people filled in the survey, to me, is a bit of a misnomer now, because I think the amount of people that engage with any type of Football Manager content across a wide spectrum of ways in which you can, and I surveyed that. I wanted to know what sort of content do you interact with, and it's across Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Reddit, right? There's everywhere. So it's not a case of like, oh, only these people play it. If you're a Football Manager player, you're already.
I think it skews younger though.
You're already at your computer.
Maybe
though.
not as extreme, but I think people just only on social media. There's going to be a whole raft of, as you're saying, the 20s, the 30+ people that have played it for 15 years. That aren't going to be interacting on social media and stuff as much because we're
well, that
that's
sounds
totally
like
fair.
it sounds like those arguments though, because I know that bandies around their office where it's like, well, the silent majority agrees with us, right? And you're like, you can't find them though, right? Like they don't, you know.
Yeah, how do you know that?
Exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't know because you haven't
they keep
asked.
buying it.
They're silent.
But they would say we know that because they keep buying it. We would say, oh well, they're silent, but they don't complain, but they keep buying it. Like, so that's the argument for like, oh, it should stay the same. But whether it's a good argument or not is maybe the conversation. I don't think they necessarily know how to get out of the situation they're in right now, or they do know, and it's such a big job that like it's hard to address.
That's it. I got so sidetracked on my original answer. I started that answer by saying they're stuck. They're stuck because they're on a really old engine. Like, I'm not a game designer. Jack obviously was at some point and can talk more
He never
about
mentions
this.
it.
But
He never mentions
No, I don't think he's ever.
yeah. I just for
He
those
drew pictures or something. Didn't
for
he?
those that didn't
Yeah,
know, but the engine, as far as I understand how this stuff works, is what you build the game on top of. In the engine that Football Manager is built on top of visually is very old. Right, and now you have things like Unreal Engine and those. So if you've heard of those before, that's what I'm talking about. And they need, essentially, to actually improve the graphics significantly, they need to transfer the game to a different engine because the engine they're on doesn't make it, like they've reached the potential of the engine they're on. And the issue there is that is probably going to take a ton of money and a ton of time. And so I do think that part of them is kind of stuck, but you can only be stuck in the same place for so long making the amount of money that they're making without getting onto a new engine, right? Because, God, you could move the game to a new engine and change nothing else, and I'd still give the game a B+ for effort, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would be really excited about it.
But changing it to a new engine, but making it the same is the massive job in itself to make the engine work same as the old engine does, right?
Which,
like just to get to the same point is going to be.
Yeah, but
I can't believe, because it's such a long job to make a new engine. I obviously have no insider information, but there's got to be a team at SI that is working on the next. I have to believe that, otherwise we're 5 years off.
Well, that's the thing.
There's got
Z's nailed it. Like game engines, both graphic engines and the physics engines, which are often two separate things, but often within the same software, take a long time to work on. The SI aren't going to hear the graphic debates this year and go, right, next year, new engine. That's just not how it works.
Yeah. No one should expect, based on this conversation or Z's tweet, that they've gone, flip the switch.
No, wait, but if they do have a new graphics engine, can we take credit for it?
Absolutely.
Agreed. But tinfoil hat time here, everyone. If you've got a tinfoil hat at home, put it on. We've not seen the stadiums change since 2018. And animations are very easy to port between engines. Not simple, but you can retarget animations. They are the easiest thing to move. So the fact that is the thing that has continually improved in FM in recent years, whereas stadiums have not changed in 5 years, makes me want to believe that in the last few years, they have been working on this.
Yeah. Do the giant footballs still in the stadiums in this version?
I think they got rid of them.
Giant football. Okay, so it has changed.
They got rid of park benches, but then they put
Update.
prison yards in the corners of grounds, didn't they, as well?
Yeah.
Occasionally you get a nice sunset as well, I find, in the background of
yeah, my
stadiums.
Whole stadium outside is a desert with palm trees, 240p palm trees.
The palm trees.
Jack, you're not happy with the brick walls, Jack. You've joined my revolution. You tried to hijack my revolution as far as I'm concerned.
I've been passionate about brick walls for a while. There are some textures in the game that look like... I refuse to believe that's how they were intended to look. I think they must be broken, and one person needs to change a value to do the tiling of textures, and it would just look better.
Okay.
So I'm not a coder or an expert, but I feel like backgrounds, flat images and stuff, like basic images aren't that hard to make good quality. I don't think that would be a big job. Is it just like they think nobody cares about them, so therefore...
Do you know what I think it is? I think Football Manager, and I'm going to use a weird analogy here, Pokemon are in similar boats, where they are games
I've always thought that.
were kind of developed by programmers first and foremost, and art hasn't necessarily been a priority with it. And a lot of the team that work on it are coders and programmers that aren't the artsy type. And at least at Sports Interactive, it feels like every year there's very few visual updates. There are some, we get the 3D scenes in boardrooms and stuff. We get the occasional kind of update to regen faces, both good and often just going backwards, it feels like. But ultimately, I can't think of a studio, game studio-wise, that I have friends that worked at or that I've worked at that has what seems like such a small art team like SI's for a game that sells so many copies. Like, often your art team is a bigger team because there's lots of visual stuff to do. Now, naturally, with Football Manager, there probably is less of that. You spend half the time in spreadsheets after all. But it does feel like, to me, from the outside looking in, and I don't have any inside knowledge here, like there needs to be a bigger art budget and a proper art team built up. One of my big fears, and this is what we had with the last kind of big update to Football Manager with the stadiums, is they brought in a load of new stadium models. We had a year or two of minor updates. Giant footballs appeared and disappeared. Burger Van showed up. And then nothing really changed. And I'm sat thinking, is that because they got in a load of freelancers to do the work? Yeah. And then when their work was done, it was gone. And they went, well, that'll last us 5 years. Yeah. Whereas I think, especially with yearly sports games, you expect progressive visual updates. And the reality is, when it comes to Football Manager, with the exception of new animations and maybe some lighting tweaks, we don't get any kind of progressive updates. I accept that 1 or 2 years, things might look very similar with minor changes. But we're at a point now where, if you go back and watch FM 2018, and I'm not talking about the animations here because they have undoubtedly got better, but the stadiums and the environments of Football Manager have not changed. And my biggest concern is we have this big debate about graphics. In a couple of years, we get a brand new spanking, graphics engine. And then SI go, well, we've done that for another 5 years. Yeah. And then it stays still for 5 more years. And that is kind of, that's maybe the best case scenario, but also the worst case scenario in my mind, because I think you just end up in this loop over and over, and you're just going to continually get stuck a bit like what Z said earlier.
Maybe they're not updating it now because the new graphics engine is coming.
That's what I want to believe.
Adding all this extra... Yeah, that's I'm going with that copium.
That's the hope of the only logical reason that we can think of, because with our tiny little brains, is that the only reason not to update the last few years, like this year as an example, is because you've got something coming. And if you've got something coming, I can understand the argument. I wish they'd tell us, but I can understand the argument of not wanting to make a big change there, right? And so Russell asked the question of, are they running out of headline features, right? And new features after years of progress, and graphics is obviously the big one. And graphics is the big one because it's the one we're looking at now. And it goes back to what I said before of, when other things don't change, you look at the stuff that's already there that little bit closer, and that becomes the target of how you maybe view the game a little bit. And ultimately, this is a conversation not about graphics and making it look pretty. It's a conversation about immersion, and how Football Manager occasionally just takes you out of what you're actually playing. And when you see these problems in the match engine or the graphics engine, you're just a bit like, dearie me. Like, okay, I get next game, whatever. Unfortunately, Football Manager is that cycle of, you can go into the next one and hopefully nothing weird happens. But there's only so many times you can look at it and go, that's happened again, and that's getting infuriating now. And of course, we play the game more often than not in front of people, so they see our sort of visual annoyance with the game, which is not what it's seen with everybody. So it does look across like we're moaning all the time, but I guarantee people watching saves and the penalties given, they go, that's bullshit, reloading that, not having that. like I'm sure that goes on in saves. We don't have the luxury of going, hang on, I'm not having that, that's not costing me a league title. So again, that's when it becomes maybe a little bit more frustrating. But once again, this is a conversation about us wanting the game to be better, not us just like ragging on graphics. I feel like you've got something to add.
Yeah, I think we're overlooking something that I have run into. Right, I've met all of these people, I feel like, at this point in the world, but there is a wing of this game that don't want the graphics to get better. And I believe
so they can turn down the graphic settings.
Yeah, exactly. But I believe, and I'm going to make a real highbrow point here. I believe that part of that contingent, that militant anti-visual wing, is in SI. I believe that some people that work at SI are very militant and anti. I think that they believe that improving the graphics would ruin the game. And I'm not talking about ruining the ability to play the game. I'm talking about actually ruining the niche nature of the game, the elitism of the game, and ruining the community around the game. I think that there is an element outside of SI for sure, and inside of SI as well, of people that like that it's a highbrow game, that it's a high-minded game, that it's only accessible.
Like they don't want these FIFA guys coming in.
They don't.
Yeah.
And they want it to be the intellectual manager game. And if I am aware that Football Manager will never catch FIFA, but if you had Football Manager on FIFA's engine, right, you would be looking at one of the most popular games in the world, in my opinion. Now, they are like, there is just a lack of enthusiasm to chase that down that I find intriguing, because I find it very difficult to argue against that. I think that if you had a Football Manager game that looked like FIFA, you would have one of the most popular games in the world.
So let me play that. Yeah. Let me honestly, sorry. Let me play devil's advocate then, because this is what I'd be wondering if I was at Football Manager. You're saying there's this group at SI that feel like this and they want it to improve to be a certain way, and that, so it's almost intentional to a degree. But why would they not want it? So the question is why? Why do they think that? Why do they?
Because it's their special thing.
It's their emphasis on.
They're a business though. They're still a business.
No, I know they're a business. And yet,
so why would they not want this?
I'm a business too. That doesn't mean that every decision I make is for my healthy financial gain, right? Like if every decision I made was for my healthy financial gain, I would not have streamed every match of the World Cup, right? And I think you get into your mind that you should do certain things, or that I am addicted to clearly trying new things on Twitch and YouTube and shoot myself in the foot perpetually. But I think that they can kind of fall prey to the same thing. And when they talk about this sort of thing all the time, and I know there's probably a lot of people that have watched this and they're in SI and they're just kind of rolling their eyes like, no, of course we want the graphics to be better. And yes, I know. Football Manager's like almost addicted to being this niche game. It's like almost afraid to.
It's like the cult of FM, right?
Yeah. It's a cult around it.
I'm going to ask the question again. Yeah, but why?
Okay.
Because they're scared of what? I mean,
it's
all well and good wanting
making
to
too much
this.
money.
You guys can, if you guys are on the same wavelength, you guys can jump in.
I don't. To be honest, to be clear, I'm not trying to put you down a path. I'm just genuinely asking, like, why do we think that is? Why are they in a position where it feels like, and again,
habit.
Is that it?
I mean, it's the same people have been working on the game for a long time.
Is it safety as well?
Well, that's what I think it is.
Because the idea, if they said, hey, right, in FM24, brand new graphics engine, whole new engine, it's as revolutionized, it's going to look like FIFA 14, let's go with. And then it comes out and it's not good enough in the people's eyes that they're like, okay, it's an improvement, but actually it's still... Like, that's because obviously it's a massive amount of money that has to be invested to build an engine, a brand new engine. Is that a worry that they're just scared to take the next step, so they're playing it safe? Because they sell almost the exact same amount of copies every year. They're always high in the Steam charts. Is it just like, we've got a business, every business wants to make money, but at the moment we're almost guaranteed this X amount of money, copies, sales.
Let's talk about that briefly. And yes, the game has come out on other platforms and not out, like we can touch on it very briefly, not out on PlayStation at the moment. Big launch around PlayStation, big talk of it going on to PlayStation for the first time for a long time, right? Was it years ago? It was on for like a brief time, Jack, and then it's not anymore. But like, and it's not out. Communication on that's been pretty limited. They've said when there's an update, there'll be an update, but we don't actually know anything about that. Nothing's been said publicly. Nothing's been said publicly. But and I can imagine, right? If you're someone at Football Manager, or even someone that disagrees with our conversation around the graphics or anything like this, you're watching this video going, stop going on about stuff no one cares about. Ultimately, and it comes a question from one thoughtful gamer plays a part in this. It was, should SI be more open about which areas and features they're working on in the longer run? Kind of like how they did with women's football. I get that those might lose some sales because people will wait I just think keeping everyone in the dark is harming them more. And you could weigh into the fact that at this time last year, 10,000 more people were playing the game every month. And the year before that, and yes, you might say lockdown is a factor into that, and it was on an upward trend, and now it's coming back down off that trend again, and it's sort of going back to where it was before COVID, and I understand that. But is that the question then? And again, if you're a football manager, you're probably going, why are you speculating? Why are you assuming all these things? We don't really have a choice. Like, there isn't a public place for us to, other than the forums where they are, a little bit.
As Football Manager stands now, no, they shouldn't advertise their new features further in advance because nobody is liking the new features. There's not big enough features, so you're just disappointing everybody earlier and getting more hate for longer than you are. So with the features that they're currently releasing in the last few versions, I think it is better to leave it as late as possible. Because you're just asking for more.
It's quite
trouble,
telling,
really, aren't you?
I feel like, when it comes to confidence. Maybe this is harsh. I think it's quite telling in confidence in their own product that they will launch pre-orders ahead of the features being announced. There's not many games that operate like that because they know there are people who just buy the game every year.
I'm going to reframe the way I was saying this earlier. What they're doing is not what I'm doing with like the militant kind of creativity on YouTube. They're doing a Let's Play. They're playing the hits. They're doing the same thing every time. They're dropped, like you said. They're doing the pre-sale before they even tell you what's in the game, right? Like they're milking the same people. They're doing the same thing, relying on the same slow growth over time. Which, and I'm going to be honest, you can make that decision and do that. I just wish that they would go for more.
It's harmed me long term. If we're going to be frank about it, like you're saying they're the Let's Play of the games industry, I am the Let's Play of the Football Manager industry. And as much as Jack maybe is an argument against that, like it harmed me. I got to a point where I felt like I was doing the same thing, and and it was a problem. But the problem is, I did a blog about this recently. Like I'm so aware of me. Like I am hyper aware. I'm so self-aware. It's damaging to me. So I'm making it knowing. Thinking this isn't good for me. This is not helping me as a career or as a mental health.
I'm even more extreme in that regard, and it's exactly like Zealand says in that I am making videos for the people that have followed me for the however many years that I've been doing it. I'm not really growing, but the people that I followed, because obviously they followed me for a reason and they like the stuff I do, and that is the stuff I enjoy making. So therefore, that is essential. I could make random videos, and we talked about those. An angry rant gets a lot of views and stuff like that. Or talking about graphics or subscription models and stuff, so it always gets good views. And that's a conscious decision on my part and my own happiness and stuff. And I think, like you said, I think that's what Football Manager are doing. It's like we've got a nice balance sheet every year. Our company size matches how much income we make. We're slowly growing, and let's not risk it. As for talking about the features in advance, mate, I don't know what you guys think about. Let's say they are working on a graphics engine. Do you announce that for FM24 or FM25, let's say, early? Or do you think that sort of stops people go, oh, I'm not going to buy the next colour version, I'll just wait for FM25 then?
That's why they don't.
If it's a massive feature...
Does it depend what it is, though? Because
say we're working on it, because then nobody's going to be disappointed next version of FM when there's no new big graphics engine, because it's coming in 2 years.
You know what's honestly... Sorry, Ben. You know what's honestly insulting? That the one that they didn't feel was going to hurt sales at all was announcing that women were going to be in the game.
And I have the data on it, and I don't like posting it. And there's a strong argument to say, like, it's a male-dominated game. The excitement for women's football isn't there. Is the long and short of it, right? Again, it was on a scale of 1 to 5 of how excited are you for women's football. 2 dominates. Like 1 and 2 dominate. People are not overly excited for it. I view it as, like, for me, it's the same as putting in, like, it's sort of like morally, it's a big thing, right? It's a great thing to put it into the game. But from a player perspective, for me, it's like putting the J League in. It's like it's giving you more.
I want the J League so badly.
But it's like putting it's just adding playable leagues to a universe that I play
think
anyway.
It's self-defense on SI's part.
Do you?
I honestly do. I think, like you said, morally it's fantastic that it's in the game. Financially, there's no reason, as we see, most people that play this are guys. There's very little interest in women's football. But down the road, at some point, they're going to start getting attacked for not doing it. So they're just, I feel like, making sure that they're protected against that.
Yeah.
And having it in the game. And that's why they announced it so early. It's like, you can't complain this version or next version because
It's coming.
in a few years it's coming down the line.
Yeah.
So we're safe.
Yeah.
So is it the only feature they've ever mentioned that
Maybe.
far in advance?
I mean, they did it because it was
This
a
far-
marketing thing. That's why they
This
announced
far
it
in
so
this far in advance, absolutely. I don't think anything has been announced because it could be like we don't know if it's going to be the next year or the year after that. Like that means it's been quite a while, and the pathway to it has been quite long. And I've no doubt, like if there's one thing saying it, the confidence I have with Football Manager, it'll be implemented in terms of like statistically and the way they put it into the game will be great. Like if you're a female fan, right, and you watch women's football and you're excited for it and you're like, I can't wait for it to be in. When you come to Football Manager to play in the Women's Super League, you will have a fucking great time. Right, it's going to be great. Like you won't be able to believe how good it is, especially with sort of like the half-assed job FIFA did on it. As far as I'm concerned, like it'll be so fleshed out. It'll look great. I hope the match engine again, and I hope the graphics engine represents how good it is, and it's part of like a big package of change in that they're going to have to change the animations and the way in which it plays compared to the men's game. It seems like a good opportunity to me to then make those changes. I'm not worried about. Thanks, Lee. Can I get that gift, please? Someone. That was great. I've got no doubt in that. But again, the bigger conversation of like, should they announce things and should I see change coming? Again, I mentioned I did a big blog post on my website around Christmas, and some people will look at this and think like, oh, it's a bit sad that your life is so invested in Football Manager that like you feel so emotionally involved when it becomes like a negative, it affects me. But it does. I am someone that like needs the game to change and evolve more than it has done because it is driving me away from being one of the bigger content creators of the game. And it does. And to caveat that, it doesn't mean I don't enjoy the game or have fun playing it. But from like someone that has to present it and talk about it and be excited about it, I am less of all those things now than I was 3 or 4 years ago. I'm getting older. To a degree, it affects my work and my lifestyle has changed. I've had a child and things like this. But just as a player of the game, I'm lethargic towards it. And when I know a new game is coming out, my expectation isn't I'm going to be blown away. My expectation is please don't disappoint me. It's like please give me something to latch onto. Yeah, and with some games I don't feel like that. I'm excited for like what's to come in it, but with Football Manager, because of, and Steve mentioned it earlier on about like the yearly game cycle of it, I know there is only so much you can do in a year, but for me that there's not enough being done year on year, and it is like, and I still love content creation. I still love this. What we're doing right now, I absolutely love this, and I hope it comes across to people watching. I'm so enthusiastic about this conversation. I wouldn't do a poll that surveys 17,000 people if I didn't care. Or like we're looking to step away. I wouldn't set up the biggest like competition of players with a streamer showdown if I didn't care. All of these things are like to me good examples of that I still love making content. But the game now is having a bigger effect on me than it ever has done before. Of like I now feel like I'm sort of sitting doing streams thinking I can't believe I'm playing like this sometimes because it feels so similar to the last couple of years. We talk about FM22. Like it's not that far from 21 or 20. Like Jack mentions 18 all the time because of the graphics. Like it feels like that, especially when you're editing it and playing it and streaming it all the time.
There's this weird thing you cling on to as well, where I've been doing this for a decade now. Like when I first started, there would be a 0.5 year, then a big leap forward. 0.5 year, big leap forward, and I'm sure the pandemic plays a role in it, but when you see SI tweeting about their new offices, how there are more people working than ever before, and it just feels like we have had a few 0.5 years in a row when it comes to stuff outside the matches, never mind the graphics, which is its own beast, it leaves me thinking, is there like this mental game they're going to release where it's like a Football Manager 2.0 and we all go, oh my God, it makes sense what's been going on.
Just go Football Manager. That's all it's going to be called.
But part of me is terrified thinking, that's what I'm clinging on to almost now and hoping for. That's like how I have to rationalise what things are like right now.
You still talk about FMO, Football Manager Online, every week to me, thinking I can't wait for it to come out. And then they just cancelled it. Jack was like, but that was my future. That was everything to me. And I'm worried the same thing will happen again.
I just can't believe the game is going to continue to advance at the pace it currently is. I'm sat thinking there's got to be a reason for it. I think SI are fortunate in the sense that FM is played by a lot of non-traditional gamers that perhaps don't have the expectations that other games have when it comes to what's going to be in a new game, what kind of updates, the regularity of those updates. Like, I can't think of many yearly release games where like fundamentals do not change, like when it comes to the visuals, and people are kind of chill with it. And I think you put the thing in the chat before for us, and obviously you can pull the chart up again, where it's like first FM versus enjoyment. SI has a hardcore group of people who have been playing the game for years and years and years and will always get it. And I think as you start to appeal to new, younger people who aren't as invested in the game, you run the real risk they hop into FM, play it for a few years, go, it's not changing enough, there's a new shiny game of a different genre out, I'm going to go play that. You start to appeal to more traditional gamers. Kind of 20 years ago, gaming wasn't cool. You know, probably less than 20% of people would consider themselves gamers, whereas you look at it now, I'd imagine, especially when it comes to the console players, which is becoming a bigger and bigger part of FM, you have to assume with the Xbox release, with the PlayStation release, ultimately Football Manager is appealing more to a gaming audience with younger people, and they are people that are much harder to retain, and I don't think you can afford to be as complacent with those people as you perhaps can be with people who have been playing the game for over a decade. That is something that I hope they realise.
We all have friends, and like this is like we all have friends that Loki, you are my friend. We all have friends. But I think I have loads of football fan friends over the course of the last 20 years. No, but 20 years. I'm going to include school just to butt myself. But like who all play FIFA, who love video games, play video games all the time. And when that percentage of players that also play Football Manager is a lot smaller. And the reason often given is looks like shit. Like, looks boring. Yeah. Doesn't enthuse me. I have friends now that are like huge football fans. Like Jack, we both know Callum. He'll be delighted he's getting a shout out, who we did for the fans with. He's a massive football fan, loves the data of football, loves the intricacies of football. But because of what Football Manager looks like, just doesn't care. Just like doesn't have an interest. Go on, Loki.
Sorry, there's two things, isn't it? It looks crap, and the barrier to entry is just
too high,
absurd.
Yeah, way too high.
It's just absurd. It's like, we're going to add a tutorial to try and help people in the game. Because there's too much text on the screen, but we're going to give you just massive amounts of text for the tutorial. It's just like, I made a video years ago that was basically a fun video talking about doing a tutorial, and with a little video that pops up in the right hand corner of a person explaining something to you in audio, so it just wasn't more text on the screen to add to the text on the screen that's confusing you and stuff. And it's just like, that obviously is a very hard thing to do, but that needs to be fixed, especially as it's talking about console players. Like, if you're a 15-year-old kid that's played FIFA career mode and then thinks, oh yeah, this Football Manager, I do like the management side, like, how on earth are they gonna... I tried to get my nephew into it. It's just, it was an impossibility. You need to like pin them down and force them to play it for about 30 hours. Then they're in. Because
it proves, the graph we showed proves, if you're new to the game, you do enjoy it more. Like, there's evidence to back this up. Like, if we can get you playing the game, but you just can't sell Football Manager with its looks.
You're right. The looks and the barrier to entry are the issue, but I'm thankful for the barrier to entry, because that's basically what I built my entire YouTube channel off of for a year and a half, was teaching people how to play the game in a way that SI didn't do that. And the barrier to entry is very difficult to solve, I think, for the game, because what we love it is this ridiculous depth and 400,000 players, and there's not a lot of games like it. So you can't just go, well, I played Skyrim, so I can play GTA open world. Woo! But the graphics, that is the number one thing I hear too, where I'm like, oh, you love FIFA career mode? I'll try Football Manager, and you show somebody a picture of it, and they're like, dude, what is that? It's like,
have you ever showed somebody Football Manager and almost felt embarrassed that that's your thing?
Oh yeah,
You mentioned that last time about going to TwitchCon and having to explain that you played that game. Brings up on his phone, and they're like,
yeah,
what?
or like somebody, somebody like Hassan. Like, I met Hassan once, and I was like introduced to him, and the way I was introduced to him was, this is Zealand. Hi, nice to meet you. If you don't know who Hassan is, he's a streamer on Twitch, does like generic gaming stuff. And I get introduced to him.
Political broadcaster, I would say, but sure.
Yeah. Anyways, he is who he is, right? Hi, this is Elon. Oh, he's like no offense to anybody in this crowd, but the guy that was introducing me goes, he's like the king of Football Manager. And so I shake.
I am annoyed.
Yeah, I knew you would be. I shake it.
I agree. I totally agree.
Thank you, Loki. I shake his hand, and Hassan looks at me and he's like, "You play Football Manager?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You would admit that in public?" That's the first thing he says to me. And I go, "Oh," I was like, "Dang, man." He's like, "Yeah, no, his brother apparently plays a ton of Football Manager, and Hassan's never played because he looks at it and goes, that looks stupid."
Yeah.
That's like his
Yeah,
whole
like
take
why
from
spend the time to learn that when it looks like that?
But look, I reckon I got Soldier Boy playing. I reckon if it meant, I could get Hassan, get it. Let's play out.
It's weird though. It's weird though, right? Because you hear a lot of discussion when it comes to features and Football Manager around the idea of bloat, that they add stuff in for the sake of it. And are we reaching a point with Football Manager where you risk putting in too much stuff that the barrier to entry becomes too high? And I am a very firm believer, and I think we talked about this during the network games last year. I'm a very firm believer that the future of FM doesn't lie with continuing to add more and more bloat. It's about adding more options for how you approach the game. Be that, when you set up a game, there's a new option that is attributeless, where all the attributes are hidden. You get more in-depth scout reports. The game provides you with a bit more info to make up for the fact you've not got the numbers there. And you can just go from options there. And maybe there is just how Football Manager, what was it? Was it always called, it wasn't called FM Touch. What was it called when they had the light version of Football Manager within Football Manager and then it branched off?
Oh, they've done a few, haven't they?
I didn't realize we were doing a quiz.
But there was a version of Football Manager where you had like the full fat Football Manager or the more streamlined Football Manager, which is basically now what FM Touch is. And the idea that when you set up a Football Manager save game for the first time, there couldn't be a wizard where you can basically toggle certain stuff you just want to eradicate from the game. Like, I think in that game, like, meetings didn't exist, like team meetings.
Isn't that basically staff responsibilities?
Maybe it is to an extent, but I'm thinking where it's less, it's not even presented to you, and down the line you can opt into it. Because I think the thing is, I don't know about anyone else, I don't like the new staff responsibility screen with all the buttons. It feels so intimidating to me as someone who plays the game load. I can't imagine being a new player, watching a Z tutorial, and he goes, it says I should do staff responsibilities, and you click that button, and there's just 3 columns of just top to bottom things that you may or may not want to do.
Yeah,
like,
knowing what's important and what's not important is quite hard as a new player.
And exactly. And for me, I feel like that is an area where Football Manager should be heading, where it's, let's not add more stuff. Let's refine what we've got. Let's add variety to what we've got, because Football Manager is a game that so many people love to play differently. You can embrace that, and that can be what you add to the game year on year.
Yeah.
I agree. They're going at it the wrong way, I think. Like with the features that they announced, because if they did a year where they took everything in the game and just made it and just refined it down to what it should be, right? If we took scouting and just now it makes sense, and we took the match engine and the graphics engine and we're like, now it makes sense, I would buy that version of the game and praise it very highly. But
do you feel like they tried to do that with the squad planner this year and it doesn't really work? Because I can't speak for everyone.
Well,
I think the squad planner this year is like 2 steps forward and a step and a half back. Like, I don't actually feel like it's that much better than the squad depth screen. It feels, dare I say, a little half-baked. Like, I know in the survey that you did, Ben, you talked about what features people did and didn't like. I don't know if you've got the data for, like, what people like, but the squad planner for me...
that was the most disappointing one,
the squad planner is the least favourite, but I think the least favourite is because it's not what people expected. I mean, that's part of the problem. It's not that it's a bad feature, it's just not the feature people wanted it to be if it's going to be a thing.
I thought it was going to be the squad depth screen, and then the Zealand term here, it was going to be vummed and like improved for the year.
Sound effects.
It didn't sound right coming from me.
Can you do the vum, please?
That's great. That's wonderful.
And it isn't really that, is it?
That's not much. But yeah, 36% of people, it was the highest percent of people, it was their least favourite feature, was the squad planner. The timeline, not far behind that. Then you're looking at the improved match engine, was some people's least favourite feature. It was also people's second favourite feature, the improved match engine. So it's like, again, people don't... It depends where you are,
I can see that, yeah, I can...
Yeah, depends how you're playing.
The goalkeepers are great. That's just a whole.
Yeah,
separate
having more animations and
The
stuff,
guy-
and
the
think like
fourth
the
door, we could
poor
do-
first touches and all that's ball bouncing up. That's all
There's
great.
a lot of great
do an hour
things.
on-
It's just also
We could do an
passion.
hour on goalkeepers. Let's not do that. I can't. Let's save that for next
You
time.
mean break dancers who don't look at the ball?
I think
Yeah, I mean,
a key
ooh.
problem before I forget this for them is that this is not a fantasy game where you're like, we need to drop, for the next version of the game, we're going to go create this new quest or something, right?
Yeah.
That you
Battle Royale.
exactly. You're trying to replicate real life, and there's only so many things you can add before you're essentially a real life manager, right? Like if you project this out over the next 20 years and you just keep adding things, you're going to need a coaching badge to play the game, right? So what you have to do is, because you can't just keep adding things forever, you have to refine the things that are in the game and make them better, because this is you're trying to replicate real world. We're not just adding a new DLC quest line or something.
Yeah, I think I was going to mention before, like I mentioned barriers to entry, like it's hard to get into the game. I think I may have even said it in the last one of these we did, right? But I know I'm the online guy, and I talk about online. But I mentioned the 10 million person player base of fantasy football, and that there, when Z says the game could explode, that there is your audience. It's not the FIFA audience necessarily. It's those people that play fantasy football and enjoy managing their fantasy football team and finding a way to grab those people and bring them to Football Manager. That's, to me, that's the area in which you're lacking. It doesn't mean it has to be an online version. It just means there has to be something that entices those people, because they are people that I think are gettable. And again, I don't necessarily know how they do that. And would graphics do it? Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of the people that don't play Football Manager for the reasons that we listed, they're all in my fantasy football league. So there's my example of, like, they're willing to play other versions of this type of thing, and I'm sure a more in-depth version would appeal to them. It's just, how do we make that happen? And again, and I'm going to repeat something I said before. Again, if you're someone at Football Manager watching this, I know lots of you watched the first one. You might not have got to this point. But the reason we have to speculate on this is because, and it goes back to the question that was asked before, is we don't know what's coming. We don't know what the future looks like. And even if we did, we couldn't say. So, like, as creators, from a creator perspective, we couldn't say. So I think people watching would like people to be, or would like Football Manager to be a bit more open, to be a bit more honest, and to be able to give us a timeline of what is coming. And I think we all accept the difficulties in that and the pressures that applies internally to a company like Football Manager. But ultimately, again, that's the direction.
I don't follow
it's good.
FIFA closely. How ahead do they announce their new features for the game? How does FIFA do it? As an example?
They tend to do it, to be honest, on a not dissimilar timeline to SI, but they have then been transparent about stuff way ahead of schedule when, like, there's big stuff coming.
Yeah.
And I
They
think
have
the
E3 and what have you, don't they? That's the thing. They have these big expos where they say this is going to be part of it this year. That's going to be like that, and then so they go across pro clubs and career mode and ultimate team, of course, and then the closer you get, the more detail they sieve out about that in lots of smaller videos rather than 142.
A 45-minute banger.
Yeah, but you know, these things happen. So ultimately, boys, it sort of brings me back to the question of, and we talked about it a little bit in the last video, of do we think, I was going to ask you about the match engine, but I think I'll be more general, of how much, it's hard to quantify, but how much better is this year's game from last year? Because I think if you're someone that hasn't bought it yet, you might watch this sort of video trying to, like, encourage you to, I don't know, or at least find out more about it. How much better is it? I'll happily go first, in that I think it's better in some areas, it's worse in others. As a net positive, just, if that's the way to quantify it, like it's just better, but it's not like, I don't know. Again, I think we made the point last time that if you weren't a creator around the game, would you have bought it? Probably not.
No,
like I probably could have stuck with FM22 and not feel like I'm missing much. Jack?
I think for me, I feel like the headline features really missed the mark, to be honest. I don't like the new squad planner. I think it's a regression from the squad depth screen. The manager timeline stuff, just it's not very good. I have a period of like 3 scrolls where it's just me signing under 20s players that I cannot get rid of, and it's just stuck there. And when I removed the features, which I'm not a big fan of, and I go, what was the progression of stuff that existed in the game last year? Because that's something that Football Manager does do. They update and refine other stuff besides the features. I find it hard to not view it as anything more than something that could have come in a patch. And I hate the fact that's my mindset. And I hate when people go, this year's game's just a patch. But I just feel like this year's game is just lacking in a few areas. And that combined with a match engine that I don't love and headline features that, at least for me, don't change the way I play the game. I'm not enthused by them. I probably come to a similar sentiment to you, where it's like, it's better. And if you play the game a load, you're probably going to enjoy it as something as a new flavor. But comes back to what I said at the beginning, where this is one of those years where, despite some good improvements and some nice additions, if there was a save game that I really loved on FM22, I don't think I'd make the move over right now.
Yeah. It's no coincidence, going back to the survey a little bit, is that the longer you play it, the more you enjoy it. The more hours you've got in the game, the more you enjoy the game. I don't think that's a coincidence. Yeah. I mean, it's not a coincidence, is it?
It's just factually not a coincidence.
Loki, how do you feel about it?
So every new feature is weighted towards how you use it. Like, say, for instance, if they'd redone training in this year's FM, it would have affected me 0% because my staff do that. And I was like, I remember seeing the squad planner and going, okay. I clicked on it and looked at it and was like, I just don't need this. Even if it's good, I know my team. I kind of know who's coming. I don't need this screen. So there was so much of this year's that just didn't affect me. Like, UEFA licenses. I'm in Ghana's 3rd division. It's going to be a while. Hopefully I'll get there one day.
Yeah. It'll feel bigger when you're there, though, probably. Which would be one of their points, I imagine. Once you get there, it'll be like, wow, okay, yeah, this is cool.
Yes, like, I still like it. Like, I think that's a fine thing. The recruitment focus is fine, but it hasn't changed massively how I scout for players anyway. So I would say match engine, other than obviously no improvement to brick walls, like, it's give and take. There's bits I like. I like the fact there's new animations. More animations is good because then it represents what should be happening in the match engine more. But there's downsides to it, as we've discussed over and over. So, like, yes, it's an improvement, but for me personally, it's like a 3%er. And to answer the question, yes, I would buy it because I'm a maniac and I'd buy it every year, even if it's just a data update. Don't tell SI. But, like, yeah. It's a tiny improvement overall for me.
That's why you're in the Kev role there, Loki. You just buy whatever. Smile and wave. Smile and wave.
Smile and
wave.
My money.
See?
I bought it every 3 years before I made content on it, because I felt like after 3 years you'd be like, wow, this is a really significant good update. And I think that the match engine this year is almost a net positive, honestly, because the variety of goals that you score is far more realistic, in my opinion. The chaos in the midfield is great. I think it's just those specific areas, namely the directness of play and the organization of the defense, that's a problem. But I wouldn't have bought it. No, I think this is definitely one of the games that I would have sat out in my 3-year cycle of purchasing. And it's unfortunate because I do think things like the squad planner are meant to, they look at it and go, well, a lot of people use Excel sheets or they have notebooks they're writing things down on, right? If you're a visual person, the squad planner just feels clunky to me. I've tried to use it and you got to go through and click and add, and you're just like, there's different filters and settings. I got to go up to the top left and switch over. Oh, sorry, this is my squad 2 years from now, my bad. And I feel like that they just kind of miss the boat a little bit when they go for stuff like that, because I get the initial idea and I get how when you're sitting in a meeting room you're like, dude, the squad planner is going to be great, people are going to love it. But honestly, the UEFA changes, the changes to like the draw and the licensing, the thing that sounded the most banal and was just not going to really mean much, ended up being like arguably my favorite feature outside of the game. The scouting
and everyone else's as well on that. 37% of people, that's their favorite feature.
Yeah,
that is the favorite of all.
And
people.
it's such a simple thing, and that should show SI, like if they look at that you don't need to reach out and add a new tab to the left side for people to love it, right? If you do, you get UEFA licensing and you create this really immersive draw experience that now exists. It's short, simple, and people love it.
I do think the draw.
It can't be a negative either. It's a guaranteed positive.
I do think the draws are. I think the draws. I think the draws are worse. I think they're so long, but you can skip them.
They
are quite long.
But you have, you have the option to skip it if you don't.
Of course,
and then
that's
the
quality of life. See, quality of life. You want those options.
Yeah, I think quality of life emphasis. But no, I probably wouldn't have bought it, even though I think that there were some improvements. But the outside of the match engine, I agree with Jack. I don't know what you're looking at as like a serious bump up.
Yeah. Do you like, because obviously we made this video, obviously like you went part of the first one, but do you feel differently about the game from the beta to now? I like it more now than I did during the beta, and I was worried I would be the complete opposite of that. And I think, again, it partially plays into the fact that I'm enjoying the save that I'm in. And if I wasn't, probably wouldn't be feeling like this. But now we've all got invested into a save and we're playing one. Are you sort of back into that mode of, it's a great game? Because it is a great, again, I feel weird saying this like right at the end.
Yeah.
As like a cover for myself of, like, it is a great game. It's still a great game. It'll always be a great game. It's going to be really hard to like regress the game from where it is.
But that's why like I do a review. It's like, do you review on just the game outside of everything
Loki.
else? How good is this game? Or do you say I'm reviewing this based on how much better it is than the last game?
It's really interesting. I went through like 25 of the reviews of Football Manager, and a lot of people, I think it's weird because they reference the past of Football Manager all the time, but review it as a game in isolation. And a few reviewers,
then it is
a
great game.
And give it 9 out of 10. And a few reviewers give it this is not improving as much as you want, and give it a 6 and a 7. But there are 90% of people that give it a 9, and as someone that plays it to the way in which we do in the conversations we have around it, it frustrates me. I'm like, it's a 9 in isolation, which I guess is what you're reviewing for a first time player. But from a progression standpoint, we are looking at a 6 and a 7, and that's like, if I find it quite frustrating, having read every review I could find on Football Manager.
I guess if the guy at IGN that's reviewing it is a Football Manager player, he's much more likely to review it based on previous versions as opposed to shiny new thing.
You would think. You'd think.
That's not just going to game reviews on.
But I urge people to go and look at the reviews and see if they agree with them. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. Again, I said the question I go to all of you: are you enjoying it more now than you did 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
Match engine's way better. My biggest concern here, right, is, and it's something that I kind of mentioned in the last video we did, which was, for me personally, like, you start to see the patterns in a match engine. A match engine starts to get frustrating in Football Manager. It always happens. It's just a case of when it happens. And if I compare the game as it is now to how it was on release, the match engine and everything else, undeniably, they've improved the match engine. They've improved other stuff. But I have this lingering sense of frustration, and actually Z mentioned it earlier, where it's like, if this is what we're playing in March, I'm going to be driven up a wall by it, because I don't think it's as good as it should or could be. I am very frustrated with the lack of match engine updates that we've had just across the board. And I understand there's a risk if you put out too many match engine updates, people's tactics get broken, people get annoyed. But when I look back on the older system...
Isn't that fun, though?
Well, I think it forces you to play differently. And fundamentally, my biggest issue with the match engine this year compared to last year is, last year I feel like you could get any shape or approach within reason to work to a degree of success. Whereas this year in the match engine, at least from my 500 hours, kind of 20 seasons playing it, that it feels like there are just certain things you have to play that work better, certain highlights you have to force. Yeah. And that is something that Football Manager in the last few versions had really got away from. And that regression, if it's left unaddressed, is really going to just leave a bit of a cloud over FM23 as a version of FM that I've played recently.
Yeah. See?
You know,
Good answer.
So that you don't know what to say or you don't know.
He's in pain.
This is like the match engine.
Yeah, he's looking at his big briefcase of SI money.
On one side, he's got match engine. On one side, he's got match engine. On the other, he's got graphics engine. And they don't know how to work together at the moment. I can see what's.
I just feel like I feel like at a certain point, I just start talking in circles. I
like 2 months ago.
Do I
He
like?
didn't
Do
play.
I
He was
like?
watching the World Cup, wasn't he?
Do I like the game better
Yeah.
than when I played with Sevilla? That's what I'm honestly trying to pull out of my brain
Yeah,
right now.
that's what I'm asking.
And marginally, yes. I feel like it would have been harder for it to get worse, though. I mean, they dropped one of the biggest updates for a match engine ever, and this is all match engine dependent because they didn't do much outside.
That
of it.
beta match engine was
Exactly.
I can't.
one of the worst,
to
wasn't
be
it?
to
Some
be
of the
brutal,
biggest.
I was pretty like angry about that. I can't believe it dropped like that.
And then
Yeah.
it didn't get updated at the end of the beta.
Yeah, and then the update took a lot longer than it perhaps should have done or expected to happen. Like again, privately, I was again. We've talked about this before, like our private and public relationship with Football Manager. Privately, with Football Manager, I was saying I think this is the worst the game has ever come out at base. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what they brought out.
Based off that assessment, I'm enjoying playing it more.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that I'm enjoying it in the way that I hoped that I would.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, exactly that.
And I so we all sort of feel the same. And let us know, people watching. We know you enjoy it, but we know you wish you wanted more based on the survey that I conducted. If you missed that, well then, get on Twitter. We're all over there all the time. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure as it always is. Yeah, we'll do one of these again if people like it. I did say to Kev, if we got to 10,000 likes, we'd redo the network game. Only 8,000. So that's why Kev's not here. He's been voted out in a way. So we'll see what happens. My plan is to do some more of these as well with some of the other creators that we've got. Some maybe the newer creators, talk a little bit more about content and that side of things as well. But gentlemen, Jack, Loki, Z, thank you for coming along. And yeah, for those that watched, thank you for doing so. And if you enjoyed it, leave a like. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.